An ordinal is effectively an inscription onto the Bitcoin blockchain for people to store data onto Bitcoin. And we just allow people to do that in a click of a button.
The SaaS user experience and UI is pretty amazing. People go to your website, OrdinalsBot, it's like right there. You can like drag and drop and create your own ordinals.
A lot of people have built on our tooling. When we launched, there were 5,000 ordinals created. A day later, there were 15,000.
And now they are everywhere. How big is this market?
It's getting towards the hundreds of millions. There's a hot mint or a hot token project launching on our platform nearly every day.
What does OrdinalsBot look like in 3 years from now?
Most of our next steps are very much pushing forward all of the functionality you can do on layer 1 Bitcoin. We'd love to be the home of one of the biggest Bitcoin developer communities, full stop.
And what about you, Toby? It feels like you're in this for more than just making a ton of money. What will be success for you when you look back on your journey here in crypto?
With OrdinalsBot, we've already created the 2 largest blocks ever on Bitcoin. I'd love to be thought as someone who's helped drive forward the future of ordinals, the future of Bitcoin, the future of tech innovation. Now it's a golden opportunity to transform finance itself.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Toby Lewis, the serial entrepreneur, blockchain analyst, and venture capitalist. You are the co-founder of OrdinalsBot, the pioneering platform empowering creators and developers to explore the untapped potential of Bitcoin's Ordinals protocol. You provide tools for inscription, token creation, digital collectibles, and more, fostering innovation, security, and community growth within the Bitcoin ecosystem. In the last 12 months since your launch, you've raised over $4.5 million, establishing yourself as a leader in Bitcoin innovation. You're also the founder and CEO of Novum Insights, which monitors and gathers intelligence in AI and the blockchain. You previously were a writer for the Wall Street Journal and have spoken at numerous conferences, including the World Economic Forum. You believe that OrdinalsBot is on the verge of creating unprecedented value for the entire Bitcoin ecosystem and will become a key building block in the next wave of Web3 development. Toby, welcome to London Real.
Yeah, well, fantastic to be here, Brian. So thanks for, and a great intro. So
hey, it's great having you. You know, I just want to start by saying that OrdinalsBot is one of our portfolio companies here at London Real Ventures. It's the world's first media-powered investment firm where our mission is to transform the world by investing in cutting-edge Web3 and AI companies while giving our partners marketing exposure across the London Real media platforms and academies. We heighten awareness, create customers, and build communities by leveraging our global audience and extensive network. Toby, we are super excited to be part of this journey with you. So let's jump in. What is OrdinalsBot?
Yeah, so OrdinalsBot was the first inscription service. So essentially, a bit more than a year ago, Ordinals really took off, which is basically an ordinal is effectively an inscription onto the Bitcoin blockchain. So it provides a way for people to store data onto Bitcoin, which is an innovation that was only really possible at the scale that Ordinals have delivered in the last year and a bit through what's known as the Taproot upgrade to Bitcoin. And a bunch of very smart people, led by a guy called Casey Rodimer, basically came up with this concept of ordinals where you could store data onto an individual Satoshi, which is like the cent of a Bitcoin. And that has led to a whole host of different things being stored onto Bitcoin. And we got chatting about censorship beforehand. You've even had like a group storing quite controversially sort of Julian Assange's war records onto Bitcoin. But there's also, we've been discussing a lot, it made fungible tokens possible on Bitcoin at scale as well. So there's been this huge development of BRC20 and another claim to fame, as well as being the first inscription service at OrdinalsBot. So when we came out, we made it possible for anyone that isn't a programmer to create an ordinal. So our business was very key in helping ordinals kick off, because when we launched, there were 5,000 ordinals created. A day later, there were 15,000, because you needed to run a Bitcoin node and sequence the ord client, which is basically mapping Bitcoin's history, mapping ordinals history to be able to create an ordinal. And we just allowed people to do that in a drag and drop, click of a button kind of thing.
Yeah, the SaaS user experience and UI is pretty amazing. People go to your website, OrdinalsBot. It's like right there. You can like drag and drop and create your own ordinals, and it's like software as a service. And like you said, before that, you would have to be kind of really deep in the weeds of Bitcoin to know how to do that.
Yeah. No, we were essentially the first DApp on ordinals and or decentralized application, and we were super happy just to see like it just caught off instantly, basically. So,
we'll talk about product market fit happening instantly, because that's an entrepreneur's dream.
Yeah.
But talk to me about, ordinals, because I think you also were part of the Ordi token as well, which has gone now up to the multi-billions of value. This is something that nobody really saw coming. And now ordinals, I don't know if it's true now, but at one point they passed the total volume of NFTs, I think at one point, as far as traded in the marketplace out there, because they became so big. Can you talk a little bit more about the explosion of ordinals, why that maybe happened, and what they're being used for?
Yeah, so I think the big driver, and so I got into like the Bitcoin DeFi space, which was a tiny cottage industry really like 3 years ago, just because I felt that like there should be DeFi on Bitcoin. But I guess you need to go back in history and go like almost to Vitalik and the founding of Ethereum. And that was 2015, 2016 era. And very few people know this, but Vitalik was actually the editor of Bitcoin magazine at that time, right? So and what happened, because the whole Ethereum ecosystem and then other blockchains allowed for people to do many more things on Bitcoin than on Bitcoin. I think there was an explosion of innovation across all these other new chains that developed, and Bitcoin, for good and for bad, has a very careful development process. So which I think has been why when innovation on Bitcoin took off, which I'd say like Ordinals was the first time there was a real innovation ecosystem that had product market fit, that just made it very easy for an intelligent programmer to deliver something to the man on the street, right? So that's kind of the seed of competition, the sort of what you need for an innovation ecosystem to take off is it needs to be easy for anyone with sort of an intelligent knowledge of crypto and DeFi to be able to use the thing quite quickly. And until last year, that hadn't happened. I like to think OrdinalsBot played a part in that taking off because we developed an intuitive UI. I think like you say, in around at the same time with BRC20. So we were kind of lucky that because we were one of the few tools around at the time, Domo, who's a very, very visionary thinker, I'd say, came up and went, you can do this meta protocol that was BRC20 to create a fungible token on Bitcoin. And he came to our platform and effectively deployed the Ordi token that, now is worth billions of dollars on our platform. So it's a nice little segue of like Bitcoin history that the most successful fungible token on Bitcoin at the moment has been created on our platform. And we like to think a number of others that have been created on our platform will be that as well. But he effectively deployed the contract, is now advising us. So we're working hand in hand with him to kind of go, where do fungible tokens on Bitcoin go? And so we're super excited about that development. And I think, I guess tying it back to that sort of little piece of history is kind of so many people have kind of loved Bitcoin, but there were concerns around like your ability to do so many things that I guess innovators want to do, right? Like a fungible token economy, NFTs, they allow any innovator to finance and create an ecosystem for things to happen. And I think until that was possible at scale on Bitcoin, a lot of the crypto innovators were doing things on other chains because it was just much easier to grow an organization at scale.
Right. So your point is that the only reason Vitalik created Ethereum is because he wanted to do more on Bitcoin, but he couldn't.
Yeah.
And now this is almost coming full circle to where it looks like now you can do things on Bitcoin.
Exactly. So
and now I guess we'll jump in right away and say the Bitcoin maxis. You know, I've spoken to quite a few of them over the years. There's a picture of one on the wall behind me, Mr. Max Kaiser, who's probably a super maxi, who refuses to talk to me because I say words like stablecoins and Ethereum. But sending lots of love out to Max. But, you know, Michael Saylor was on my show twice and he said, Brian, I like Bitcoin because it has low aspirations. He likes the fact that it does one thing and one thing only, and that it doesn't try to do everything at once. And maybe that's why it's become the equivalent of digital gold. Maybe that's why there are ETFs. Obviously, it's not a security. You might argue that it did do the right thing maybe for 10 years, but now we're seeing a lot of other potential use on it. What has the reaction been to ordinals and inscriptions on Bitcoin?
So obviously, I think the maxis, some of them have been quite negative towards it. I think a lot of people have been, I'd say most Bitcoiners have actually been very positive because they're like, now I can do something on Bitcoin. There's obviously been, there's a very famous CTO of Ocean Mining, Luke Dash Jr., who has been extremely vocal and extremely critical of ordinals. There's also Casey, who invented ordinals, found it very funny. He was like, actually, ordinals would never have been taken off if Adam Back hadn't gone on and spoken on Twitter Spaces to like 100,000 people going, you should not do an ordinal. And it's kind of, there's an irony that every time, because the maxis like Max and others are very famous and have a voice, but generally when you tell people not to do something, like they kind of get more curious, right? Like I think so ironically, I think because like the great thing about Bitcoin, it's so stable and it's very hard to sort of like make changes to Bitcoin Core, effectively, like I think most people think that effectively the maxis, if they want Bitcoin without ordinals, would need to fork Bitcoin, right? Like, so the irony is like they need to create a new version of Bitcoin to have Bitcoin without ordinals. So I kind of think as long as, and the other thing is the fee market on Bitcoin is really, really has taken off. So we're working very hand in hand with Bitcoin miners like Marathon and others to put take over particular blocks, and the fee market generated by ordinals has been very good for miners, and a lot of miners, especially come the next halving, because their fees will halve effectively from each individual block they get. Many miners possibly, maybe not in a scenario where Bitcoin's at 70K like we've had the all-time high today, but if Bitcoin were at 30K, a lot of miners would be underwater without ordinals and without the fee market. So they literally, because a lot of them have a huge amount of debt. So the irony is kind of, if you chat with the miners and the node operators, they're in general very, very positive about this development because Bitcoin really needed a fee market.
Right. Yeah, it's really saved a lot of people because they're able to make good amounts of money by basically mining and approving all of these different ordinals blocks. Bitcoin is supposed to be for everybody, and it's decentralized for a reason because nobody can stand up and say you can't do that, right? I mean, that's the whole point of this technology, is that you can do whatever you want with it, right? And so it's a bit rich when maxis come in and say you're not supposed to do it this way because the point of Bitcoin is freedom at the end of the day. Is that the way you think about it?
Completely. It's sort of, I honestly think most Bitcoin maxis are doing it for sure. There's kind of a matcha. It almost seems intellectually incoherent when I hear some of the views like, how can you think this thing? How can you think that thing? And yeah, like you say, I think the whole ordinals movement, and which is a lot of very smart coders and individuals are pushing this thing forward on Bitcoin. And I think what's nice about it as well is Bitcoin is actually probably a slightly safer market for the man in the street than like mainnet Ethereum, because of smart contracts and because it's kind of almost like a complete free-for-all, is just a less safe environment. And some of the fixes that have been made by the people designing ordinals, it are actually just a slightly smoother experience for retail, right? So making it harder to be scammed, making it harder to lose money in a smart contract hack or whatever. So I think there's a lot that's very positive about ordinals, and also like you say, the kind of freedom of speech sort of issues. Let people do what they want to if they can make it work on the protocol.
Yeah. I'd love to dive in and maybe get a little more granular here, because so as of a few years ago, Bitcoin was Bitcoin. You would buy it with the idea it was digital golds, and over time it would be money that didn't, get printed, that wasn't inflated, that wasn't controlled by a central bank, and that it might appreciate over time. And for that reason alone, it was good enough for Michael Saylor to put 10 billion in it, and good enough for people to hold. And that's amazing. But now, through some of the work that you've done and everyone else, now you can do lots of things on the Bitcoin chain. You can inscribe a non-fungible piece of art, maybe call it an ordinal. You can create a fungible token with maybe a BRC20 protocol. And I think that's going to grow onto the Room protocol, and we can talk about that. You can also inscript data on there because censorship is real. We've been censored. And Bitcoin it's a blockchain that's immutable. So imagine putting data in there. Imagine somebody in North Korea being able to send you a message that couldn't be erased. And this is real. I mean, even the Wayback Machine on the internet can be tampered with by the CIA. All these things can be changed, but most people would probably argue you can't really change that immutable chain on the Bitcoin. So you could literally have something that's censorship proof. So I would love to talk about all these things. First, just the non-fungible side of it. Ordinals have just blown up. They seem to be everywhere. There seemed to be a huge demand in China as well. And when the NFT market on OpenSea volumes were down 98% and all the apes were in the toilet and everyone thought this was just a crazy tulip phase, at the same time, in a weird way, Ordinals were then coming up. And it was the story of 23. I was at the first Ordinals summit in Singapore. And the vibe there was wild. I mean, guys are walking around in capes, and everybody said it reminded them of the early Bitcoin get-togethers where people were there just to develop something cool before all the booths came out and all the marketing dollars came out and all the brand sponsorships. It was like a real innovator's kind of paradise. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, what the Ordinals were and how it contrasted with, say, some of the NFTs in that movement.
Yeah, so I think I think you've nailed why ordinals are important, really. So I think the so essentially an ordinal is stored into a taproot address, and like you say, it's on Bitcoin. So probably the most uncensorable blockchain in the world, extremely decentralized, governed by a system that kind of a consensus mechanism that everyone understands, and really the data will be on Bitcoin for all of time, right? So or as long as Bitcoin exists, and I think nearly everyone buys into Bitcoin, having made that stake into becoming digital gold, right? And I think to my earlier point, it's really important that fee market exists to be able to keep Bitcoin as sort of keep Bitcoin's consensus mechanism working really well. I think the other thing, the NFTs, I think really, really disappointed in some ways, just because when you buy an NFT on Ethereum, it's typically a pointer to somewhere else. There's a handful of projects like Art Blocks or whatever that stored the data directly onto Ethereum, but because of some of the technical constraints on Ethereum, you actually typically an Ethereum NFT was pointing to either something like IPFS or Arweave that the man on the street don't really know, or like even an AWS. So actually they were being guaranteed by Amazon. So you could buy an NFT on Ethereum, think you're using blockchain, but really the image you were buying was stored on this thing that could in theory Amazon could censor it, right? So the and even more funnily, like you had instances like the FTX NFTs, where effectively the suddenly one day all the owners of the FTX NFTs got told your NFT is now the property of the US government, which completely undermined the point of this non-fungible thing that would be on a blockchain forever. Right. So when you suddenly had ordinals and information, data could be stored onto Bitcoin, it suddenly, this is something much more like in the public consciousness than going, hey, your things on the interplanetary file storage system, like which no one other than like the hardest core techies knows about, right? And so it's I think that really resonated with people, that you had this native on-chain asset that you could trade. And I think we've already seen early use cases that are important. I think I referenced it earlier, but unpacking it, the Julian Assange war records, a group has decided, hey, the CIA and whoever might be wanting to take these down, but we're going to keep this as part of history forever that people can't tamper with and can't censor. And I think we've brainstormed doing kind of a web-free Huffington Post on Ordinals, right? Where you basically we've got a blogging tool, Scribe, and the thinking is like we can partner with various media operations to create something which is just literally free-form content that anyone can share with the world. So I think like those kind of use cases, or like property deeds or ownership, like they actually lend themselves really well to ordinals and Bitcoin. And you could imagine, especially like you say, I mean, the North Korea example also does keep people up at night in terms of like, okay, we've created a system going literally, it's kind of unstoppable, which is the nature of Bitcoin and blockchain. But,
yeah, it's fascinating. And so then we saw the values of all these ordinals skyrocketing while nobody wanted to touch NFTs anymore. And so it was weird because people thought digital collectibles were over and it was a fad, but in fact, it wasn't over. There was interest on them now that they were on this Bitcoin ecosystem, maybe because it was new, but also in so many ways, it was now guaranteed by the most robust network out there. Your whatever collectible art was on-chain, not subject to some Amazon web server going down. And all of a sudden you had massive interest, which helped your business model because then people came to you and used OrdinalsBot to start minting ordinals everywhere. And now they are everywhere. How big is this market now?
So, I mean, it's getting towards the hundreds of millions. So that's pretty impressive in the space of a year, and has been breathtaking for us to watch. Actually, like there's a hot mint or a hot token project launching on our platform nearly every day, which is great for us to service and just astonishing to watch unfold, right? So.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about the collectibles. Next, the BRC20 becomes interesting. So now, can you have a fungible token on the Bitcoin ecosystem? Now I can hear Max rolling over in El Salvador right now, freaking out. But this becomes really interesting. If you can now have a token you can trade on this most robust ecosystem. Now, I was in Dubai in January and I attended the Satoshi Roundtable, which is like this invite-only event with super OGs, and there's no media. We couldn't even disclose the location. And it was just people at these roundtables where we would get together, and BRC20 was one of the hottest thing there. Everybody was talking about it, what it was, its limitations. A lot of big players were there, and I was learning and listening to these conversations. What is BRC20? Can you explain it? Obviously, it sounds a lot like ERC20, which I guess is intentional. Maybe walk people through like what the thoughts are, and maybe even quickly, what is ERC20? A lot of people might not even know.
Okay. So yes, like you say, BRC20 is designed to be a Bitcoin fungible token standard. So where people can have a set number of tokens with a particular ticker, and then in theory, what we're really trying to push forward is so-called Bitcoin utility. I guess to your main question, ERC20 was a very famous token standard on Ethereum. BRC20 is now a growing in fame token standard on Bitcoin. And the reason why you want these standards is to be able to allow any individual really to be able to create their own token economy easily on a particular blockchain. So if ERC20 on Ethereum has almost suddenly been like one of the killer features of Ethereum, right? Like it, the market cap of all the ERC20s from a financial perspective is greater than Ethereum. In most markets, it can go up or down, but I think it's been suddenly the killer feature of Ethereum. Obviously, I think we've seen this huge interest in that ecosystem taking off in Bitcoin. And from sort of most people that I know in crypto think that Ordinals and BRC20 has been like the strongest narrative in all of crypto in the last year. And I think probably a large part of that, it's always hard to know, but I personally think that any mature crypto ecosystem needs a non-fungible ecosystem where you're storing individual bits of data and figuring out use cases for that. And then you need a token ecosystem. And the reason why that's interesting is actually, firstly, it just drives speculation, right? Like the being able to have people come up with an idea and a concept and attach it to a token has proven, I think, over the last 15 years to be very, very powerful. And almost like the seed of Bitcoin was that there was this first kind of decentralized token at scale that lots of people could buy into. But an innovator, right, like wants a particular organization to be able to leverage a token economy. And the power of a token economy is that you can get in the hands of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of users and drive forward a particular thing or idea. And like we've obviously seen the concept of DAOs, so decentralized autonomous organizations. But what's great about these token economies, and I think Bitcoin's the best example of it, right, is that at scale, you can have millions of people who feel part of a thing and are able to make impact in how that thing is driven forward, either by communicating on channels like this one or at like the core protocol level. So you can still impact Bitcoin, but in all these, when fungible tokens work well, they do pretty transformative things. I think on Ethereum is probably the best example of where hugely impactful companies and organizations have been created out of just releasing a fungible token and then adding features to it and making it something that the crowd can use. So you need to look at organizations like Compound, Aave, Uniswap. I personally think those businesses have really transformed crypto. And I think you're going to see that in Bitcoin at scale in a big way over the next year to 10, 20 years.
Yeah, great comparison. I was thinking of those companies in mind. And your point is that because of the creation of this ERC20 protocol, all of these other companies were able to be created and then deliver massive amounts of value to the ecosystem, sometimes eclipsing the actual market cap of the ecosystem. I'm sure it's true. I mean, if Ethereum's at a 500 billion or 600 billion right now, whatever it is, the ecosystem of the ERC20s is easily probably surpasses it now. So it just shows you how much utility. If the same thing happens for Bitcoin by creating a standard of a token inside of a token, you might say, with Bitcoin or on that layer, you could empower, who knows, all these things that we never saw coming. People talked a lot about, financing on Bitcoin, but nobody really ever dreamed of the existence of a Uniswap or an Aave or a Compound. And look what happened because you created that standard. So now BRC20 has been created. We are seeing that this could unlock massive use cases and could be bigger than the Bitcoin ecosystem easily. Where is BRC20 now? Because Ordi is one of those important tokens. You guys helped create that. Domo's an advisor for you. That was one of his early pieces. But it's not a utility token. Right now, it's more like kind of a meme token. Now, it still works, which is great. But there haven't been many utility tokens on BRC20 from what I understand. I think there's one coming up, which I think is going to be your token as well from OrdinalsBot. But tell me, because this was the real contention at Satoshi Roundtable, is I couldn't get anybody to show me a real utility token because there are some limitations on this chain. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, no. So I think that clearly, like there are some Bitcoin native features that make utility harder, perhaps, in the sort of. But we actually think it's more that just there hasn't been like the conditions to channel that utility. So we've been developing our own token Trio, and we can go into that in a bit more depth. But what like early examples of utility that we think that any token economy really needs include being able to just pay with that token, right? So we're developing tooling that will allow people to pay with Trio when it launches. It's currently sitting in our company wallets, but effectively the allowing people to pay with that and use that as the unit of the economy of the ecosystem is the first actual utility, right? So the great thing about Bitcoin is you can go to El Salvador or a cafe in London that accepts Bitcoin and pay with Bitcoin, right? Like I think it's never really caught on that much just because of the cost of transferring Bitcoin. Like you say, stable coins and other things have actually been easier for people to do business with. But I think it's the first utility is actually just being able, I can send something to you and get a good and service from it. Then you have token gating. So and NFT gating as well, possibly has also uses. But I think token gating is just an obvious thing where you have the token in your wallet, then you can use something, right? So those two things, when Trio goes live in a month or so, we want that to be live in our system day one, and then we're an infrastructure company for Ordinals and Bitcoin. So any developer or enterprise or consumer can use our API or our portal, and effectively those users, especially the API users, will be able to also create a system where they'll be able to pay with a BRC20 or token gate with a BRC20. Then just in any fungible token ecosystem, you then want the ability for any of the users to be able to make decisions for a protocol. So effectively, we're looking in how you do staking, which then allows people to act as governors in a fungible token ecosystem. And all three of those things are totally possible on BRC20, just because of how BRC20 was developed initially. It was very much like almost like a meta protocol, a concept in the head of one engineer who sort of sketched out on the back of a napkin. It was kind of like a scientific proof kind of thing. It's like, here's how a fungible token and ecosystem might work. He came to our platform, deployed Ordi, and then suddenly, like within months, it was $1 billion market cap thing.
This is Domo.
Yeah, this is Domo. And Domo's actually got another job, right? So it's kind of hilarious that like he did this like almost like a one-man band, and then is like, he's a true decentralist. So effectively it's like all open source programmers coming together and sort of debating in a GitHub where BRC20 goes next. But like he's literally a one-man band in a way, right? Like he's got like a whole ecosystem of people gravitating around him and supporting him. But it's been like he's gone the most hardcore like crypto decentralist open source way of developing something, which means that it's taken a lot of time for people to do things, and people deployed in the first year just a lot of BRC20 domains and seeing if they'll stick. And then now I think there's various different builder groups, of which OrdinalsBot is one, that is going, yes, how do we make this a functional utility ecosystem? But I think if you look back to the early days of Ethereum in 2015, 2016, this has actually been rolling out faster than Ethereum did, right? So because we've learned all the lessons. So I think the contention that you can't have utility on BRC20 or Bitcoin is just wrong.
Wow. So I saw Domo talk in Singapore. He wears a mask in public, which again added to the beauty of that one-day conference. And yeah, he's well respected in this industry. And he's obviously at the forefront of this. Would you say at OrdinalsBot, you guys are probably on the cutting edge of BRC20?
Yeah, 100%.
And the utility, because you see everything and you're developing it and you're about to launch your own, maybe one of the very first proper utility tokens?
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're without a doubt one of the major builder groups in this ecosystem, and I think a lot of people like have built on our tooling, which is great, and there's a lot of great projects, like a lot of the early mints on Magic Eden have been done for our platform, so that's one of the biggest marketplaces, and they've been great partners of ours. Then famous DeFi apps like Alex have used our platform, and I think in terms of pushing out the future of BRC20, we're definitely aiming to be one of the thought leaders and groups that are working in a decentralized fashion to make this work. And so like some of those early DeFi platforms we mentioned on Ethereum, we'd like to think we'll end up becoming one of those early BRC20 powered DeFi ecosystems that hopefully can operate at a similar sort of scale, or maybe even bigger scale, because it's Bitcoin, right?
So that's exciting. You just said the D word, which is DeFi, whereas before wasn't obvious your business model had any aspirations towards DeFi. You were a SaaS service where people could mint their own Ordis or their own BRC20 tokens. So I guess that's my next question is, what is the future of OrdinalsBot? What are you going to morph into? DeFi on Bitcoin was another hot topic at Satoshi Roundtable, but I haven't met anybody who's actually figured it out. The concept is incredible, especially if we talk about the ETF, and we can get to that. But if you've got institutions holding Bitcoin, institutions love yield-bearing instruments. I worked in banking for 15 years. That's why I'm very bullish on the Ethereum ETF, but that's got its own issues. What is the future of OrdinalsBot? Are you going to become a DeFi platform? Are you going to become all these other things?
Yeah, no, 100. So I guess, firstly, we want to push, I think what we've seen with Ordinals is the fact it's on Bitcoin layer 1 really resonates with people, right? And I think you see that in other blockchain ecosystems. So in Ethereum layer 1 is still king, right? So even though one of the flip sides of that is the nature of layer 1 blockchains is they're always very expensive. The fee market is always going to be worse than scaling solutions, the so-called layer 2s. So I think most of our next steps at OrdinalsBot are very much pushing forward all of the functionality you can do on layer 1 Bitcoin. But I think inevitably
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.